Hello.
Hello. So I would start. I have a lot of agenda items, and the first one is more something that we should do, but then we can move on to discussing the other items. So I will start by attempting to demo check mode staging rollback. Reason being is that in future we want to test check mode production rollback before attempting a real production rollback. And so what we want to test today is is the check mode really a dry run? So we will just check if we can roll back. We will trigger it manually because check mode is not supported by chatops. And then we can move to the discussion items. And by the end of the meeting, we check if actually we didn't roll back. So the pipeline is green, but it's still running the current version. So let me share my screen. Here. Okay, so let's start with where it is. Well, I can open a new tab. So it's here, release doc. Just a random one. So where it is, runbook, rollback deployment. Okay, the first thing I'm gonna check if what we have in staging now is rollbackable or not. So here we go. Okay, this tells me it is safe, same version that we had before. I already checked this, but it's very small change set. But again, we are doing a dry run, so nothing should change here. So let me go back here. No, indeed. Oh, too many tabs. Where are you? Here. Okay. So maybe I should move this next to this. Okay, so we can roll back. So we need to replace this information here. So I'm going to copy this into this, and the SHA, according to documentation, is what we define as previous. Yeah, so here, previous is here. Wow, we finally reached the situation where we have two tags instead of one. So let's see. Yeah, we wrote what to do here. Let's see if it really works, right? So
why do we have two?
Because omnibus changes, I suppose.
I see. Okay.
So it is possible for more than one tag to be displayed. In that case, you should pick the most recent tag based on tagging date. Okay, so let's see if this is true. So where it is, 0820, 0420. So this here. Okay, so yeah, but it looks like that we tagged again on a new omnibus version. So this is supposed to be the right one. I am
exactly
going
the decisions you want to be making in a crisis. So this is great. Comparing timestamps.
So let me see. Yeah, I mean, this makes sense, right? Because if we are, this is comparing, I'm back here. This is comparing Rails code changes. So we are assuming, as we wrote in the runbook, that in this case, we want to roll back an application change and not an omnibus change. So the most recent one is supposed to be the previous version. Okay. Let's move on. So we have version. We need to replace the plus with a dash, but we cannot run the rollback as is described here because we want to run in check mode. So we go to the manual procedure, which is here. And this should explain us. Okay, so basically we need to run a deployer project pipeline manually, and we need to provide this information plus check underscore mode true or yes. This is a good question. So it's not written here. So let me go here. We'll start with, let me deploy environment. Then it's deploy version. This, and we replace this with this. Then is deploy rollback. Yes. And then check mode, which I will, okay, it's not documented there, so I will double check in the code just to be sure.
It's check mode, one word, no underscore.
Wow. I was super sure there was an underscore.
I was too.
So check mode true. Just, don't we have? No, it's check mode, just this one. Okay. I'm glad we checked. So here it is. Check mode. True. So this should run check mode rollback on staging with the version that we identified here. Okay, so I'm going to run. If someone wants to stop me on the count of 3, I will hit run pipeline.
Just out of curiosity, I showed up a tad late. My apologies, but how come we didn't use chat ops and just append the dry run flag?
It's not supported by chat ops.
Lame boat.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
we never
need
planned to do
automate
this.
This is way too much work.
Yeah, but the point is, so okay, I'm completely fine in adding it in chat ops. The point is that this is kind of a one-off thing, and is kind of rehearsing what we will need to do in case of chat ops failure. So think about, I mean, chat ops failure is gonna be a big problem because probably it runs on ops, so probably yeah. If ops is down, we are screwed. But let's say that
if Slack is down at the same time
Yeah.
we're down, you know, we will still need to do something somehow. So this makes sense.
So at least we know, right? So we saw how to run it manually. We just tested today. We will test another times when we run the dry run in production. And okay, I'm gonna run it. So there is an extra thing that I usually do here, which is checking this. So every deployer job at the beginning outputs this information. And because I was working on dry running tests on production, things like that during my merge request, I developed this habit of checking this on the syntax. So you still are in time for canceling something in case you mess it up with the check mode variable. So this is okay. And this basically started. So let's just check one. Okay, check mode true. So what I would like to do now is, let me paste this in the agenda. So this is the rollback. Now I'm going to check this dashboard here, which is okay. So this is the version, major version running, AC53, blah, blah, blah. And there's 25 machines. So this number, this version here is not the same that we are rolling back to, which is, show me here. Yeah, is 92B2. So we can move on. And at the end, we would double check this dashboard here again, and this should still be running AC53. Let me take note here. So, oh my. So we expect to see. Yeah, kind of. No, I hit the wrong button. Okay, probably I broke the normal definition of text. We're fixing it later. Yeah, so that's it. So Henry, I see you're writing things here. So do you want to verbalize before we move to the discussion point?
No, I just thought looking at the number on the dashboard, I just thought maybe this Thanos query is easier to track that we have version changes or something, because it's need to memorize numbers and look. I don't know. I'm not really very familiar with this versions dashboard. And I thought maybe having something with a history of changes and versions maybe would be easier to read. Maybe we can add this later to this dashboard. Just the thought.
Okay, so regarding this, that dashboard is not even entirely what we need. There's this issue that I linked because we don't track versions. We don't easily track versions on Kubernetes. So if you have ideas of how we can improve this, maybe we can comment in the issue 12770. And because instead of just doing what I propose, we can just figure out what's the best version, but the best way for understanding what is running in all the environment for from a release manager point of view. So I'm open to suggestion here. Okay. So should we move to discussion point?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. So I started with this idea. So I would love to suggest using the Epic for 1.1. So the one about writing the rollback pipeline as a journal for our discoveries. The reason being is that there are two problems here. One is that I think it's a bit hard to follow on action items in this agenda, because we tend to rush action items at the end of the meeting because rolling back takes a long time. And then it's really hard to figure out if someone got assigned to something, if the number of issues increase, or maybe we're losing work. So this could be a good idea, as well as what I'm thinking here is that there will be a lot of eyes on us when we will start rolling back production for real. So I think it would be safe to show that we did the due diligence, right? So that we tested things that we think without through possible problems and things like that, and dumping down what we did and the decision we made, so that then we can extract things out into some kind of a blueprint, or it can be the production change issues or whatever format we decide, but then we have something where we kind of explain the basically failures mode that we thought about and the decision that we made. Because the point is that if we are in an incident, we are already in a broken state. So rolling back, maybe we move from broken state to a more broken state or a less broken state, but it's fine. But when we will attempt the first rollback in a working state, is kind of, yeah, we are in a working state and we may end up in a broken state. So maybe it would be better to, yeah, have this type of document ready. And this kind of ties into my second point, which is I would like to discuss with all of us what can go wrong. So thinking about things that may broke, things that may halt the rollback, and yeah, if makes sense, having a a test on staging where we in some way reproduce the problem so that we try to figure out if our procedure can survive this type of failure and things like that. And then we can also write this in the document that I was mentioning. So this is really open to conversation. I was thinking about something top of my mind from what happened this morning. GitLab.com isn't available. How do we get current and previous deployment? And then there are other situations like what happened last week, basically. So that one machine went missing during the rollback. So I don't expect this to happen in production because in theory we have change issues. And so at the beginning of a rollback, it's a deployment. So we check for open change issue. And I don't expect an SRE to run a change issue that will remove some machine during a rollback or a regular deployment. But yeah, machine can still disappear. Maybe a machine went offline or something like that. So
I think it could definitely, I mean, it's hopefully unlikely, but if we had multiple incidents at the same time, it can be hard to coordinate actions being taken across both. So yeah, it is possible.
Answering your first question about how to know the previous and current version if GitLab.com is down, I wonder if we can rely on dev or on staging, assuming they are running sort of the same version.
Or just looking into Prometheus. Don't we have the metrics still available also when GitLab.com is done?
So you mean scanning through basically the new index? Oh no, you're talking about Prometheus, not about but Prometheus, it tells me the current state of a system. It tells me nothing about the past. So maybe Elasticsearch, the new index, the one that I don't remember the name of the new index we created, the one that we send logging information about. We are deploying this, we are changing this. Yes, but I was more thinking about something. So there are too many things that we touch when we run a deployment. So for instance, everything, so we are assuming that ops is online, because if we don't have ops, we are screwed up, right? So what I'm thinking here is that, can we move some of those information from canonical and security repo to ops? For instance, if we mirror the security mirror on ops without pipelines, I don't care. I mean, it's just for having the same code, then we can run the tracking, release tracking on ops, and also on canonical and security mirror, so that developers get all the nice tracking feature in their merge requests, but we have a, let's say, more reliable source of information, so that when we do all of our decision about tagging something, finding the latest deployment or things like that, we rely on the same instance, which is also usually subject to, I mean, it's not auto-deployed, right? So it's a bit more stable.
I'm fairly sure we have an issue for this. I'll see if I can try and find it. It would be a good one to, certainly an interesting failure scenario. We should have a bit of a plan for it.
What kind of format are you thinking about for that?
I'm thinking about exactly the same format that we're already using. So
The actual
using
deployment
GitLab,
feature.
yeah, the environment feature and deployment feature of GitLab itself. So we mirror security, and we mirror so security omnibus, security Gitly, and security GitLab, and same code that we have right now, but instead of tracking 2 times, we track 3 times: ops, canonical, and security.
And what information will that give you?
The list of deployment, running deployment, completed deployment, failed deployment.
Right, but then only a list of deployment.
Yeah, but the first step that we have when we want to roll back, for instance, is
right. But what I was aiming at is ignore everything I say, so you don't have to take it into a serious consideration. Just brainstorming after a full day of incidents. What if we do this in one go and we have the release tasks reports that we create, right? With the commits that we are posting there, and then we kind of link to the QA testing issue elsewhere and so on. That issue is not really useful anymore. That report is no longer as useful as it used to be. Arguably, I don't know whether it was ever useful, but it was there. What if we create a new report that would be something in the format that we actually need right now, which is, I'm coming from this old deployment and deploying this new one, and then the links to what I'm deploying, and then a report of this is everything that is going into this report, all of that in a nice format in an issue. And we can then do that in 2 places, right? .com, oh, I didn't manage to update it there, it's fine. I always want to update it in ops in some location. So you're going to have a report that we all can use and we can share with others publicly as well. And we don't have to go through multiple levels of.
So you're thinking about human readable information here.
Yeah, because we have human unreadable information everywhere. The one thing that we don't have consistently is a report of what we just did. And our report was pushing things out to all of these individual MRs to actually give people the slice of their own little world, information for their own little world, which is fine. That needs to continue. It's really important. But we didn't build anything for ourselves. We built the Grafana dashboard, which is useful, but it's the same problem like you mentioned earlier with Prometheus. It gives you the current state of the situation. It doesn't give you. So the closest we have to this historical overview is what Jarv created with that Elasticsearch event stream.
Yeah, also the monthly release issue. The monthly release issue have links to every single deployment, so you can scroll it and there's no information if it failed.
No.
But you have the list of deployment.
No, I'm not
Also on GitLab.com.
Yeah, it's on .com. Yeah, we know that it's on
.com. But the point I was trying to make is it's then trivial for us to say, all right, I'm generating this report and I'm pushing it to 2 locations in one go. Done. You don't have to think about it. Again, this is only if we think this is something we need. I just know that we didn't do anything like this so far because we were always rushing to serve someone else's needs first.
Yeah, I was coming from a different point, which is we already have a lot of tools that read the release information right now. So I considered, so having a more reliable source would just help us to rewire those API calls to the new location. And so we save everything we have done so far. But this, so maybe we can have both. so that, because I mean, adding a location where we track things is trivial, and as well as rewiring where ChatOps is checking and things like that. But we can build on top of that and generating a human readable comment in an issue wherever. I think in Ops is the right place, but we can discuss.
Do both.
So that, yeah.
Right, generate in both places, doesn't matter. Right, like the source where you're going to generate that information is going to be in Ops anyway, because all the pipelines run there. But the actual report, you try to push it on the .com and you try to push it on Ops. On Ops, it can't fail. On .com, it can if .com is unavailable.
Okay.
Yeah, and that might solve our other problem, which we've kind of been going around, which is all the different bits of information we want to show, and where, like, how many comments do you put under, like, different, how many like threaded comments you have, and maybe we just have one report that has everything. So.
Okay. Yeah. I think this is I think this is something worth discussing with some example when, yeah, I think it's yeah. Let's move this into an issue and try to figure out what it would be useful for us.
It's also probably worth chatting with the DevOps release team or orchestration team just to see what kind of ideas they had in general. And I'm not saying we need to build something in there right now. I'm just saying maybe they already look investigated. Maybe they have some mockups already. And if it's just a matter of mockups needing to be implemented, well, that we can do, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Well, let me take that action then, because I'm chatting to them tomorrow anyway. So I'll open the issue and we can start padding this up. Nice.
Okay. And yeah, the other point about the failure scenario was exactly more about problems that may happen. So yeah, and this is where I would like to have help from everybody in thinking about what can go wrong. And I think maybe the best option here is, if someone has ideas, right, we can start collecting them. Otherwise, we can open an issue and bouncing ideas and then trying to move from these ideas to real tests that we can run in one of these meetings.
We've got time, right? How long's your pipeline got left?
Let me check. It's green, obviously. I mean, it's doing nothing. So pipeline is green. Let's double check the version. So okay, I see the same version running. I'm also going to check the help page just in case. Yeah, also the help page is still the current version, so we didn't roll back. So
that was very quick.
I mean, it basically tells you I will run this, but it will not. So
so there's no actual.
The longest time is spent with what is the omnibus that reconfigure things and wait for process to be killed. But it just in that case we just tell you I will run this.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay, so
since we have some time left over, like, I think it might be worth just getting some kind of starting points that we can take into an issue to discuss. So, like, in terms of it being a rollback pipeline, like, how could this go wrong? Like, what do people think of? And use the chat as well if that's quicker to just drop ideas. But like, generally, like, when you think about that, what are all the things that could go wrong? So like, one thing we haven't talked a lot about is the application not being backwards compatible. So we know we have QA tests. Is there any way that, so we know we've talked loads about post-deployment migrations. Is there anything worrying about the other migrations or other things like feature flags or anything else like that that we maybe also haven't considered?
So I will give my ideas here. So what I was thinking here is that this rollback pipeline is simplified compared to the roll forward. So one of the failure mode that we have in a regular deployment is that there are basically we have stages and things should happen in order, right? So you first rinse around migration, then you upgrade GitLab, then when it's done, you upgrade the fleet, and then it's post-deployment migration. So what we have right now is just preparing stuff, rolling back everything, rolling back everything, and then you just track that you have done, right? So at the essence is just one stage. So this, in a certain sense, simplify things, because basically, if something goes wrong in terms of, I'm thinking about the chef cache, inventory cache, so the problem that we had last week. So if we are hit by a problem like that, and we know what happened, so okay, we screwed up, that machine has, we needed to remove a machine for some reason because of other actions that are going on the incident, we can run the rollback again. The warm-up will download the same image, so it's already there. Then the fleet will be upgraded again, and most of the machine will be just running the right version, so we just do nothing. And because the cache is an artifact, it will not be there in the new rollback pipeline. So we will generate it again at the beginning, and so we just, if that was the problem, it would complete the rollback. What scares me as a failure is our application changes. So the same problem that could cause an outage rolling forward could cause an outage rolling backward. So we have extensive documentation about how we should write code, but what happens if we don't? But this is a bit, I mean, it's a bit outside of the scope of the rollback. I mean, what I'm thinking here is that if we are starting from a working system and we roll back and we break something, then it's a problem. But starting from a broken system, attempting to roll back, if the code is not backward compatible, is exactly the same type of process and problem that we have if we roll forward and is not, in that case, forward compatible. So it means that something wrong was done in development and we need to start the escalation and we need to figure out why, corrective actions, so that these things that will not happen in future.
So in terms of if that happens, so that's the use case of we see something, our pipeline goes through and the QA tests fail, is one visible way of doing that. I guess there's a worse one, which is the pipeline goes through, the QA tests pass, and there's a unknown problem. I suppose two questions. One is, do we have any way to test that? Probably not, right? What will happen if the QA tests fail? Would we be able to, like, we could rerun them, right? What would we actually do?
Yeah. So this is what I'm thinking here is this. We already run that QA with that same code base and it was green. Otherwise it couldn't be a successful production deployment. So if this happened, we should ask ourselves, is it a flaky QA test? is or there's something in the state of the system, because basically we know that the code works because we were already running it. We were already running that code with that database schema, because when we upgrade Canary, we run database migrations, but production is still running with the old code. So we, in theory, we know that let me use the right terms, the previous code can run with the current schema. There are some things that can be different here is, for instance, Redis state. So, and by Redis state, I mean both cache and sidekick parameters. So job parameters and sidekick can be tricky here, but I want to reiterate what I said before, is that we have extensive documentation on how to implement sidekick workers and how to make them forward and backward compatible. It happens that we don't do this. It happened a couple of days ago, if I remember, that a new parameter was introduced and this broke. So in a certain sense, it's exactly the same thing. But we are more confident about the code that we are shipping, because at least that code was working.
Okay. Scarback, do you want to go through the ideas you've got listed out?
No. Should we stop a deployment in the middle? We could run into a few problems because we do a warm-up which pre-downloads the package prior to us performing the actual installation. We do this to speed up the actual deploy, because that warm-up happens during the period of time in which, during the baking time. So at that point, you've downloaded a 1 gigabyte package to our servers. If we stop the deploy, the cleanup job does not run. When the cleanup job does not run, we still have that 1 gigabyte apt package cache on that server. And if we do a rollback, well, we need to warm up again to re-download the older package now. For some reason, our disks are quite small for some servers. API is more impacted recently because we've got an issue with file uploads occurring. So we have consistently run into file problems, at least in the last 2 weeks, where the API servers are running out of disk space during deployments. If these are happening during deployments, I can imagine what will happen during a rollback procedure. At that point, the only option is to log into the server and do some manual remediation. The automatic remediation would be to run an apt clean beforehand, but that kind of wipes away the warm-up job in the first place. I'm not sure what the best scenario for that particular situation would be. Should I go into the next one, or do we want to talk about that for a split second?
Let's talk about this for a second. So I think it's a good example, something that we should test. We can fill the disk during a rollback or something like that. So what my idea here is that this is, this is not specific to a rollback, right? So this could happen even with a roll forward. It's just that it's more, let's say, more likely in the sense that maybe we stopped something and we didn't clean it up, the previous installation. So maybe we are in a worse starting situation. But so what I want to say here is that we have procedure in place right now. They are manual, but we, as a reason, it could happen that the disk is full during a deployment, and we just ping the on-call and say, yeah, we had a deployment failure because this machine is running out of disk space. We see this from the failure in the on the installation, and so maybe this is different for you or Jarv or Henry, but for the rest of us without production access, we kind of say we can't do anything. We just ping the on-call and ask for help. So I don't see special risk in the rollback here, but I think is worth and valuable to figure out if the same solution we have for regular production deployment can apply here as well. So is it fine if an SRE jumps into the machine, clean up the disk space, and we run retry? I think it's okay, but we should test it.
Does our CI has an ensure job?
Ensure job?
Yeah, a job that always runs.
I don't think so. The one that runs even if it fails or not, right?
Fails or
That one.
succeeds. Yeah.
Let me double check, but I don't think.
There's a win always rule, isn't there?
There's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't, like if there is an always rule, at the end of the pipeline, there is no reason for us not to clean up. Failure or success.
Yeah, but there's a point is that, think about retry. So something failed for reason X, and then you're going to clean up all the machines, even though they are still running the installation.
What is going to happen? You're going to retry, and the job is going to run slower because it needs to fetch a new package. That's it. No?
It will fail because Ansible is not smart enough to tell apt to update the cache prior to trying to install a package. So apt won't know about the package existing.
So wait, you're telling me it, oh my God, really?
I would love to test this, but I'm pretty sure that's the scenario.
Alternative option. Manual job at the end of the pipeline.
What about a cleanup job at the beginning of the rollback? Because we know, if we know that a rollback,
that is only if you're focusing on resolving the rollback problem, right? But we established that we have this happen on all jobs, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So that's an option for sure. For example, a manual job at the end of the pipeline where our release manager just clicks and then it cleans it up could also be an option.
Scarbuck, I have a question. But could we add the package download as part of the, so the word map as part of the regular deployment? Because, I mean, usually with Ansible, if something is already there, it would do nothing. So the word map will speed up because we'll pre-download. The always job can clean up in any case, but then if it's not there, it will still be downloaded on every run. I mean, I'm not really sure about the net implication of this because we spend time for downloading, then we may have flaky installation. This is going to clean up everything. So maybe the manual job is still the better option here.
I think it'd be worth having it, right? like it's a nice, it doesn't have an overhead, right? So it'd be good to have it around.
Precisely. And there might be an improvement. We may be able, I would love to test to validate that this is the actual scenario that we would run into, but there may be a flag we could set in the Ansible pipeline where we could tell app to run an update prior to an install just to get that cache refreshed.
Cool. Is there anything more on disks being full? Should we talk about nodes stuck in drain state?
Yeah, so we all know about this. We've been having this happen rolling forward in the past few weeks quite often. Sometimes it's been due to a failure of some sort related to disk being full, so Ansible is forced to stop. So the next time we retry the job, Ansible doesn't want to because it detects that nodes are stuck in drain, which is not the appropriate setting we need it to be in. I'm curious if instead of leaving a node in drain during a deploy, maybe we cycle from drain into maintenance mode during the deploy. But the problem with that, though, is that we've explicitly made maintenance mode the option where if you were there to begin with, you would be left in maintenance mode after the deploy completes. So we'd have to revisit that logic if we want to change that behavior. Otherwise, I'm not really sure what to do with this, because leaving a node in drain during a deploy could be a legitimate situation that we may want to have an SRE investigate a problem. But again, that may depend on the failure scenario. So I'm not sure if there's an easy way to automate our way out of this particular item.
So this is a good point, Scarbuck. I think that so far we always focused on a deployment was completed and we want to roll back. And so we were starting from a, say, clean state can be broken in the sense that the application is not working, but it's still it's a clean state. We never tested or discussed. I mean, we discussed sometimes about the we had a broken deployment. We figured out that something is wrong while rolling forward, and then we want to stop and roll back. So we mentioned this, that there are those manual jobs like putting things back in, then putting things outside of drain state and things like that. So I don't know, maybe it's worth writing something about, or even a run book, or talking a bit more about this, because what I'm thinking is that in terms of backward compatibility, I think I'm sure we are safe, because we didn't reach the post-deployment migration. So even if the package includes post-deployment migration, they are still to be run. So no problem. We can still go back to the current package. So, but there are these gray areas that only SREs knows about how can we put the system in a, I would say, in a deployable state.
I guess one potential option is if we're doing a rollback, we could simply ignore that check. Nodes that are left in drain will just simply stay in drain after the deploy completes. That way we get the rollback completed, and then we at some point need to maybe revisit, maybe this is part of our run book, making sure that all the nodes are not left in a drain state. That way we have all of our capacity available to us. I'm not sure what implications that may have, or if there's any further checks that would need to be modified if we decide to go that route, though.
Let's flesh that one out. It sounds like a good one that would be nice to get set up to actually test out and work that out. So let's make sure we flesh that one out. Henry, do you want to go through S1?
Yeah, or maybe S2 or S3, but if we want to roll back, we probably are an incident, right? And so I think when we roll back, we maybe should generally ignore incident checks, because I don't see us needing to stop rollbacks when we are in an incident, because normally we just do it for an incident, right? So I don't know if we check for incidents by rollbacks, but if we are, then we should ignore it, I think.
It's a good point. It actually makes me realize that one of the other things we should add to our rollback run book is how do we announce they're about to do the rollback, right? Because that's the other thing. If we've got multiple incidents running, it's super hard to keep track of things. If we're rolling a deployment back, we should make sure that's really clear. So maybe there's like a step before we actually just kick things off that we announce somewhere or build it into the rollback announce it, because it's really hard to distinguish it from a regular deployment right now.
Yeah, but what I'm thinking is that now in the beginning, I don't expect us release manager to just decide to roll back and we roll back, but at least the SRE on call will be involved.
Well,
which is-
maybe I'm thinking like when we have multiple incidents, right? So like when we, you know, like the other month where we had like 4 or 5 and we didn't necessarily have the SRE on call, we had an SRE, but there were other people investigating other things. So I think it would be worth just having we also make sure like announcements or one of our channels has a real clear, like this rollback has started.
Okay, yeah.
I don't think this is an issue. I think it's not the prepare nor the warm-up job that performs this check. There's a job called GRPD changelog, and we don't run that during the rollback.
It's not that one. There's also the production
not that
checks.
one?
So you're right. There are 2 types of checks. One is the one that you mentioned, but the other one is the production check. And production checks are checking for change issues and incident, as well as metrics. So it's kind of expected metrics will be in a bad shape, because if we are in an S1 incident, probably we have an outage. The one that I'm not sure about is change issues, because I would like to make sure that, yeah, I really don't know. I mean, it's a good point.
Well, keep in mind, change in issues are blocked on incidents. It's one of the checks that people need a checkbox before they start a change request. So
Okay.
if someone's not following our own guidelines, that in itself is a different problem. But
I think if we make sure
something-
that
Go ahead, sorry.
we are not rolling back without an incident, I think then we should be fine, because we should always first have an incident or declare an incident before we roll back, and then we have the right people in a call or interacting with us to announce that we will roll back now. And if you have multiple incidents, then we need to find the central place where this is all handled, maybe the incident Zoom room or some other channel, but this is the way how we coordinate this, and then we need to make sure just to announce it there. But we should just be sure that we have an incident for this rollback, and then I think it's okay.
Yeah, it makes sense, because in the first test, we will have a production change items, which is kind of the same thing as an incident. I mean, it's not the same, but it's a synchronization point, right? So we know that everyone involved is aware that we are testing this, and when we will have to use it for real, there will be always an incident.
Nice. Scarbeck, do you want to chat about improving chef inventory?
yeah, so last week during our attempt to roll back, we had this issue where one of the servers disappeared, and that's because we keep our chef inventory as an artifact object inside of our pipeline, and that artifact expires after 1 hour. Currently, the only way to break that is to literally wait for 1 hour, or maybe delete the artifacts. I don't know if that's possible in our API, but maybe we could make an improvement to that inventory script that allows us to provide it some variable or some method of breaking the cache, forcing it to re-download as necessary. That way, if a server disappears out from under us, or if some servers appear because they're brand new, we have a way to deploy to it.
There is a GitLab feature for this. I think it's called Clear Runner Cache, and it's a button that you click. And
But
it
this is
clears
not a
runner
cache. It's an artifact.
This is an artifact. I see.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, we checked. It's an artifact.
Okay.
I did the same mental connection last week when we was trying to figure out what was going on, but it's an artifact. We can browse the artifact and you can see it.
And we can't delete an artifact, can't we?
No. So I'm quite
Maybe we
sure there
should
was a
switch it to
button for
using
deleting it.
cache.
But the point is that it really depends on if the script can run again without having the artifacts there, because the difference between cache and artifacts is that cache is not necessarily ready. So your script should be able to generate it if missing. Artifacts are kind of guaranteed, right? That was why I said, as a mitigation from this, we could rerun the rollback. But I agree that if we have, I think we should open an issue. Maybe we need a variables that we can set, rerun the pipeline, and we'll just invalidate the artifacts and recreate it.
Is there any harm in switching it to a cache object instead of an artifact? I don't know why we did this as an artifact in the first place.
Because they are guaranteed to be there. And you don't have to deal with cache poisoning or things like that. Because cache can be, depending on how you configure your cache, you may have multiple jobs injecting different values because it's shared among pipelines.
Cool. We have just a couple of minutes. I mean, we're probably over time based on how my calendar invites work. But like, do you want to go through terminology quickly, Alessio, to like close out that issue?
Well, I like Scarbeck proposal. I don't see other.
I agree. I gave a thumbs up. I was going to write one and then I read Scarbeck's proposal and I just didn't bother. So
Okay, let's call it done. So Scarbeck
Yeah.
proposal for the win. Okay.
Easy. Does that mean we should review like who wants the action to check the runbook has the right words, and do we need to update the chat ops command, I assume?
I don't think so, because current and previous are already there. The only specific term is new, which we don't have it right now because it just said there is a running deployment, something like this. So probably we can rephrase that a bit, but yeah.
Nice.
Let's double check what we have. Yeah, maybe we need to make sure that we have a place for documenting this, and so that we can reference and explaining why we are using these terms.
Learn the words, right? We need a Slack bot that shouts at you every time you get the wrong word, basically. Awesome. Is there anything else we need to go over?
I don't think so. I will do the exercise of summarizing what we did today in the epic, and then I will try to figure out action items and things like that, and try to ping people and see if we can assign things asynchronously.
Perfect. Sounds great. Lovely. Thanks very much, everyone. Speak soon.